The lantern swung wildly in Zachary Novak's calloused hand as he pushed open the barn door, fully expecting to find a coyote or perhaps a mountain lion responsible for spoiling his horses. But instead, his eyes landed on something that made his breath catch in his throat. A young woman curled up in the hay, her dark auburn hair spilling across her torn shawl like copper in the dim light. Her eyes flew open at the sound of his boots on the wooden floor, and she scrambled backward against the barn wall, her dress filthy and tattered, her face streaked with dirt and what looked like dried tears. She could not have been more than 22 or 23 years old, close to his own 26 years, and the fear in her green eyes struck something deep in his chest. "Please," she whispered, her voice hoarse and desperate. "One night. Please, then I'll go. I just need one night to rest, and I promise I'll be gone before sunrise." Zachary stood frozen for a moment, taking in the sight before him. It was late September of 1882, and Winslow, Arizona was not the kind of place where decent women ended up sleeping in barns. The town sat along the Atlantic and Pacific Railroad line, a growing settlement in the high desert where the summers scorched and the winters could turn bitter. He had worked hard for 3 years to build his homestead on the outskirts of town, raising horses and cattle, living alone in a modest house he had constructed with his own 2 hands. "You running from something?" he asked, keeping his voice level despite the way his heart hammered in his chest. She hesitated, then nodded slowly. "From someone. But I won't bring trouble to you. I just need to rest, gather my strength, and then I'll move on. I swear it." Zachary studied her face in the flickering lantern light. She looked exhausted, her cheeks hollow, her lips cracked. Whatever had driven her to his barn in the middle of the night had pushed her to the very edge of her endurance. His mother, God rest her soul, had raised him to be a gentleman, and he could no more turn this woman out into the cold desert night than he could stop breathing. "What's your name?" he asked. "Luna," she said after another pause. "Luna Dawson." "Well, Miss Dawson, you are not spending the night in my barn." He saw a panic flash across her face and quickly added, "I have a house with a spare room. It's got a door that locks from the inside, and I give you my word I will not bother you. You can clean up, get some food in you, and sleep in an actual bed." Luna stared at him as if he had just offered her the moon itself. "I could not. I should not impose." "You are already imposing by making me stand out here in the cold arguing with you," Zachary said, and though his words were gruff, there was a hint of warmth in his tone. "Come on. The house is warmer, and I have stew left over from dinner." She stood slowly, wincing as she put weight on her left foot. Zachary noticed immediately and stepped forward, offering his arm. Luna looked at it for a long moment before accepting, and together they made their way across the moonlit yard to his house. The interior was simple but clean, with a stone fireplace, a sturdy wooden table, and furniture he had built himself. Luna stood in the doorway as if afraid to cross the threshold, but Zachary simply moved past her and began stoking the fire back to life. "Sit," he said, gesturing to one of the chairs near the hearth. "I'll warm up the stew." Luna sank into the chair with a grateful sigh, and as the fire grew brighter, Zachary got his first good look at her. Despite the dirt and exhaustion, she was beautiful in a way that made his chest tighten. Her eyes held a mixture of wariness and intelligence, and there was a strength in the set of her jaw that suggested she had not always been so desperate. He ladled stew into a bowl and set it before her along with a hunk of bread. Luna stared at the food for a moment, then looked up at him with tears suddenly brimming in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. Zachary nodded and turned away to give her privacy as she ate. He busied himself putting water on to boil, gathering clean towels, and trying not to think about the questions burning in his mind. Who was she running from? What had happened to bring her to such desperate circumstances? And why did the sight of her make him feel protective in a way he had not felt since his younger sister had died of fever back in Missouri 5 years ago? When Luna had finished eating, he showed her to the spare room. It was small but comfortable, with a bed covered in quilts his mother had made before her death. "There's water heating on the stove if you want to wash," he said from the doorway. "I will leave towels outside the door. Take whatever time you need." Luna turned to face him, and in the lamplight he could see that she was trembling. "Why are you being so kind to me? You do not even know me." "Everyone deserves kindness, Miss Dawson," Zachary said simply. "Get some rest. We can talk in the morning if you are still of a mind to leave." He closed the door and retreated to his own room, but sleep eluded him for hours. He lay in bed listening to the sounds of Luna moving about, the soft splash of water as she washed, and eventually the creak of bed springs as she finally lay down. He found himself staring at the ceiling, wondering what tomorrow would bring. Dawn came too quickly. Zachary rose before the sun, as was his habit, dressed quietly, and made his way to the kitchen to start coffee. He was surprised to find Luna already awake, sitting at the table with her hands wrapped around a cup of water. She had cleaned herself up as best she could, and he could see now that, beneath the grime, she was even more striking than he had initially thought. "Morning," he said, trying to sound casual. "Coffee will be ready soon." "I should go," Luna said, but there was no conviction in her voice. "Where will you go?" Zachary asked, pouring ground coffee into the pot. She was silent for a long moment. "I do not know. Somewhere he cannot find me." "This man you are running from, who is he?" Luna's hands tightened around her cup. "My husband, though I use that word loosely, as he never treated me as a wife should be treated." Zachary felt anger flare in his chest. "He hurt you." It was not a question, and Luna did not treat it as one. "Marcus Dawson is a cruel man. I met him in Santa Fe 2 years ago. He was charming at first, attentive. My father had just died and I had no other family. When Marcus asked me to marry him, I thought it was the answer to my prayers." She laughed bitterly. "I did not know that I was trading one kind of loneliness for something far worse." "What did he do?" Zachary asked quietly. Luna looked up at him, and he saw shame and pain warring in her expression. "He drank, and when he drank, he became violent. I tried to leave twice before, but he always found me. The last time he told me that if I tried to run again, he would kill me." She took a shaky breath. "3 days ago, he came home drunk and angry about a poker game. He grabbed me by the throat and started choking me. I thought I was going to die. But then he passed out, and I knew it was my only chance. I took what little money I could find and ran. I have been walking and hitching rides on wagons ever since, trying to get as far away as possible." Zachary poured 2 cups of coffee and sat down across from her. "You cannot keep running forever, Miss Dawson." "Luna," she corrected softly. "And what choice do I have? I have no money, no family, nowhere to go. If I stay in one place too long, he will find me." "Then do not run," Zachary said. The words came out before he had fully thought them through, but once spoken, he realized he meant them. "Stay here. Work for me. I could use help around the homestead, and you would have a roof over your head and food in your belly." Luna stared at him as if he had lost his mind. "You cannot be serious. You do not know me. I am a stranger who appeared in your barn in the middle of the night. I know you are running from a man who hurt you. I know you are brave enough to risk everything for your freedom. That is enough for me." Zachary held her gaze steadily. "I will not lie to you, Miss Luna. Life out here is hard. The work is demanding and the land can be unforgiving. But you would be safe and you would be free. That has to count for something." Tears spilled down Luna's cheeks and she wiped them away impatiently. "Why would you do this for me?" Zachary was quiet for a moment, searching for the right words. My sister died 5 years ago. Before she passed, she made me promise that I would always help people who needed it, that I would not become hard and closed off just because life had dealt us difficult hands. I have tried to keep that promise." He paused. "Besides, I could use the help. Autumn is coming and there is a lot of work to prepare for winter." Luna looked down at her hands, then back up at him. "If I stay, it would only be temporary, until I figure out my next step." "That is fine," Zachary said, though something in his chest tightened at the thought of her leaving. "Stay as long as you need." The days that followed fell into an easy rhythm that surprised them both. Luna proved to be a hard worker, rising early to help with the animals, mending fences, and taking over the cooking duties with an enthusiasm that suggested she was grateful for the distraction. Zachary found himself looking forward to mealtimes, when they would sit together and talk about everything from the weather to their childhoods. He learned that Luna had grown up in a small town in New Mexico, the daughter of a schoolteacher who had taught her to read and write and instilled in her a love of books. Her mother had died when she was young, and she had spent her teenage years caring for her father as his health declined. When he died, she had been alone and vulnerable, which was how Marcus Dawson had managed to sweep her off her feet. "I should have seen the signs," Luna said one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the desert sky in shades of orange and pink. "But I was so desperate for companionship, for someone to care about me, that I ignored all the warnings." "You cannot blame yourself for trusting someone," Zachary said. "That says more about his character than yours." Luna smiled at him, and Zachary felt his heart skip a beat. Over the past week, he had found himself increasingly aware of her presence. The way she hummed while she worked, the sound of her laughter when one of his horses did something amusing, the gentle way she touched everything as if marveling at her freedom. He was falling for her. The realization hit him one morning as he watched her in the corral, expertly calming a skittish mare that had been giving him trouble for weeks. She moved with a natural grace, her voice soothing as she stroked the horse's neck. When she looked up and caught him watching, she grinned, and Zachary felt as if someone had knocked the wind out of him. This was dangerous territory. Luna was still legally married, still running from a violent man, still planning to leave as soon as she could. He had no right to develop feelings for her, and yet he could not seem to stop himself. As October arrived and the weather began to cool, Luna seemed to settle more fully into life on the homestead. She stopped mentioning leaving, and Zachary did not bring it up, both of them existing in an unspoken agreement to simply take each day as it came. Then one afternoon, everything changed. Zachary had ridden into Winslow to pick up supplies, leaving Luna at the homestead. When he returned 2 hours later, he found her in the barn, her face pale and her hands shaking. "What happened?" he asked, dropping the supply sacks and rushing to her side. "A man came by," Luna said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He was asking questions about whether anyone had seen a woman matching my description. He said his friend was looking for his wife who had run off." Zachary felt cold dread settle in his stomach. "What did you tell him?" "Nothing. I hid in here until he left." "But Zachary, what if it was one of Marcus's friends? What if he has tracked me here?" "Then we will deal with it," Zachary said firmly, taking her hands in his. They were ice cold despite the warmth of the day. "You are not alone in this, Luna. I will not let him hurt you again." Luna looked up at him, and in her eyes he saw fear but also something else, something that made his breath catch. "Why are you doing this? You could tell me to leave, wash your hands of the whole situation. Why are you standing by me?" The words came before he could stop them. "Because I care about you. More than I should, probably, but I cannot help it. These past few weeks with you here have been the happiest I have been in years, and the thought of you leaving, of you being hurt, It tears me apart." Luna's eyes widened, and for a moment they just stood there, hands clasped, the barn quiet around them except for the soft sounds of the horses. Then Luna stepped closer, rising on her toes to press her lips softly against his. The kiss was gentle, tentative, a question and an answer all at once. Zachary's arms came around her waist, pulling her closer, and for a moment the world fell away. There was only Luna, warm and alive in his arms, kissing him with a passion that matched his own. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Luna rested her forehead against his chest. "I care about you too," she whispered. "I have been trying not to, telling myself it is too complicated, too dangerous, but I cannot deny it anymore." Zachary held her close, breathing in the scent of hay and sunshine that clung to her hair. "We will figure this out," he promised. "Whatever comes, we will face it together." But figuring it out proved more complicated than either of them anticipated. Over the next few days, they heard reports from town of a man asking questions, showing a photograph of a woman who matched Luna's description. Marcus Dawson had indeed tracked her to the area, and it was only a matter of time before he found the homestead. "I should leave," Luna said one night as they sat by the fire. "I am putting you in danger by being here." "No," Zachary said firmly. "Running has not worked. Every time you run, he finds you. We need a different approach." "What are you suggesting?" "I am suggesting we go see the sheriff. Tell him what has been happening. Get the law involved." Luna shook her head. "You do not understand. Marcus is charming when he wants to be. He will convince the sheriff that I am the one in the wrong, that I am a hysterical wife who ran away for no reason. I have no proof of what he has done to me, no witnesses. It will be his word against mine." Zachary wanted to argue, but he knew she was right. In 1882, a woman's testimony against her husband carried little weight, especially if that husband was as manipulative as Luna described Marcus to be. "Then what do we do?" he asked. Luna was quiet for a long time. "I could divorce him. If I could prove abandonment or cruelty, I might have grounds. But that would require money for a lawyer, and it would take months, maybe years. And in the meantime, he would still be looking for me." "I have some money saved," Zachary said. "Not a fortune, but enough to hire a lawyer if we need one." Luna looked at him with tears in her eyes. "I cannot ask you to do that." "You are not asking, I am offering." He reached across and took her hand. "Luna, I meant what I said. I care about you. More than care, if I am being honest. I think I am falling in love with you and I want a future with you. But we cannot have that future if you are constantly looking over your shoulder, waiting for him to find you." "I am still married," Luna said softly. "Even if I feel the same way, even if I want that future too, I am still legally bound to him. Then we will break those bonds, whatever it takes." The resolution between them brought a new determination. The next morning, Zachary rode into Winslow and made inquiries about lawyers. There was one in town, a man named Theodore Palmer, who had a reputation for taking on difficult cases. Zachary arranged a meeting for the following day and returned to the homestead to find Luna in the garden, harvesting the last of the autumn vegetables. "I found a lawyer," he said as he dismounted. "We have a meeting tomorrow." Luna straightened, brushing dirt from her hands. "Zachary, I have been thinking. Even if we can start divorce proceedings, Marcus will not accept it easily. He told me once that I belonged to him, that he would never let me go. He will fight this." "Let him fight," Zachary said. "We will fight harder." That night, as they prepared for bed, there was a new tension between them. Zachary found himself hyper-aware of Luna's presence in the next room, separated from him by only a thin wall. He lay awake thinking about her, about the kiss they had shared, about the future they might have if they could only navigate the dangerous present. He must have eventually drifted off, because he was jolted awake by the sound of breaking glass. Zachary was on his feet instantly, grabbing the rifle he kept by his bed. He could hear Luna crying out, and he rushed from his room to find the front door hanging open, cold night air rushing in. "Luna!" he shouted, but there was no response. His heart pounding, Zachary ran outside into the moonlit yard. He could see two figures struggling near the barn, and he recognized Luna's dress. Without thinking, he raised his rifle and fired a shot into the air. The sharp crack of the gunshot echoed across the desert, and the struggling figures froze. In the sudden stillness, Zachary could hear a man's voice, slurred and angry. "That is my wife, you son of a gun. You have no right to keep her from me." "Let her go," Zachary said, his voice deadly calm as he leveled the rifle at the man holding Luna. In the moonlight, he could see Marcus Dawson clearly now, a stocky man with a cruel face and whiskey on his breath even from 10 feet away. "Or what? You will shoot me." Marcus laughed, but there was an edge of uncertainty in it. "She is my property. The law says so. The law also says I can defend someone on my property from an intruder," Zachary replied. "You broke into my house. You are assaulting this woman on my land. I have every right to defend us both." Marcus's grip on Luna loosened slightly, and she took the opportunity to wrench herself free, stumbling toward Zachary. He kept the rifle trained on Marcus but reached out with his free hand to steady her. "This is not over," Marcus snarled. "She is my wife." "I will go to the sheriff, have you arrested for kidnapping." "You do that," Zachary said. "And while you are there, I will be telling him about how you broke into my home in the middle of the night and tried to drag a woman away against her will. We will see who the sheriff believes." For a long moment, Marcus stood there, swaying slightly, his face twisted with rage. Then he spat on the ground and turned, stumbling back toward a horse tied near the road. "This is not over," he called back over his shoulder. "You hear me? This is not over." They watched until he rode away into the darkness. Then Zachary finally lowered the rifle. His hands were shaking with adrenaline and fury. "Are you hurt?" he asked, turning to Luna. She shook her head, but she was trembling violently. He was waiting. "I heard the glass break and went to investigate, and he grabbed me. He said he was taking me back, that he was going to teach me a lesson about running away." Zachary pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "He is not taking you anywhere. I promise you, Luna, I will not let him hurt you." But even as he said the words, he knew the situation had just become much more dangerous. Marcus knew where they were now. He would be back, and next time he might bring the law with him. They spent the rest of the night awake, Zachary sitting guard with his rifle while Luna huddled by the fire, wrapped in blankets. When dawn finally broke, they rode together into Winslow for their meeting with the lawyer. Theodore Palmer was a middle-aged man with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense manner. He listened carefully as Luna explained her situation, occasionally making notes but mostly just letting her talk. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair and steepled his fingers. "You have grounds for divorce," he said finally. "Cruelty, abandonment, physical abuse. Arizona territory has been fairly progressive about women's rights to divorce compared to some other places. But I will not lie to you, Miss Dawson. This will not be easy. Your husband will contest it, and without witnesses to the abuse, it becomes a matter of your word against his. What if we have proof that he broke into my home last night and attempted to abduct her?" Zachary asked. Palmer's eyebrows rose. "That would certainly help." "Did anyone else witness this?" "Just the two of us," Zachary admitted. "But there is broken glass at my house, evidence of forced entry." "We can work with that," Palmer said. "The first step is to file the divorce petition. That will take some time to process, and in the meantime, I can also file for a restraining order to keep your husband away from you, Miss Dawson. It is not foolproof, but it is something. Luna looked at Zachary, then back at the lawyer. How long will all of this take? If everything goes smoothly, 6 months to a year. If your husband fights it every step of the way, could be longer. Palmer's expression softened slightly. I know that is not what you wanted to hear, but the law moves slowly, especially in these matters. Do it, Luna said firmly. File the petition, the restraining order, everything. I am tired of running. I want my life back. They left Palmer's office an hour later with papers filed and a court date set for the initial hearing. Zachary took Luna's hand as they walked back to where they had tied their horses. Are you all right? He asked. Luna nodded, though her expression was troubled. I knew it would not be easy, but a year or more. That is a long time to live in limbo, not knowing when Marcus might show up again. You will not be alone, Zachary reminded her. Whatever happens, I am with you. She squeezed his hand. I do not know what I would do without you. The words hung between them, weighted with everything they could not yet say, everything the circumstances would not allow. But as they rode back to the homestead together, Zachary felt a fierce determination settle over him. He would protect Luna, help her win her freedom, and then, if she would have him, he would spend the rest of his life making sure she never had to run again. The weeks that followed were tense. Marcus did not come back to the homestead, but they heard reports from town of him stirring up trouble, telling anyone who would listen about his ungrateful wife, who had run off with another man. The gossip spread quickly, as gossip always did in small towns, and Zachary noticed the looks they got when they went into Winslow together. Luna bore it all with a quiet dignity that made Zachary's heart ache. She held her head high when women whispered behind their hands, ignored the disapproving stares of the shopkeepers, and focused on the work at the homestead. But it wore on her, he could see it. Some nights he heard her crying in her room, soft sounds that she tried to muffle, but that carried through the thin walls. He wanted to go to her to comfort her, but he knew it would not be proper. Not when she was still married, not when the whole town was already talking about them. November brought the first real cold snap, frost glittering on the grass in the mornings and the horse's breath visible in clouds. Luna threw herself into preparing for winter, preserving food, mending clothes, and winterizing the barn. Zachary watched her work and marveled at her resilience. One evening, as they sat by the fire after dinner, Luna looked over at him with an expression he could not quite read. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "The future," she said quietly. "What it might look like when all of this is over." Zachary set down the piece of leather he had been working on. "And what do you see?" Luna was quiet for a moment. "I see mornings waking up without fear. I see working beside someone I trust, someone I respect. I see the possibility of happiness." She looked at him then, her green eyes reflecting the firelight. "I see you." Zachary's heart hammered in his chest. "Luna." "I know we cannot make promises yet," she continued. "I know there is still so much uncertainty, but I need you to know that when I think about my future, you are in it. You are at the center of it." He crossed the room in 3 strides and knelt beside her chair, taking her hands in his. "When you are free, when all of this is behind us, I want to marry you. I want to build a life with you, right here on this land. I want to wake up beside you every morning and fall asleep with you in my arms every night. I want children with you if that is something you want. I want everything, Luna. Everything we can have together." Tears streamed down her face, but she was smiling. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes to all of it. Once I am free, yes." They sat like that for a long time, hands clasped, foreheads touching, making silent promises for a future that felt simultaneously impossibly far away and tantalizingly close. The court date for the initial hearing arrived in mid-December. It was a cold, clear day, and Zachary dressed in his best clothes while Luna wore a simple but respectable dress they had purchased in town. They rode together to the courthouse, where Theodore Palmer met them on the steps. "Remember," he said to Luna, "answer the questions directly and honestly. Do not let them rattle you. You are doing nothing wrong by seeking your freedom from an abusive marriage." But when they entered the courtroom, Zachary's optimism faltered. Marcus was there, dressed impeccably in a fine suit, looking nothing like the drunken, violent man who had broken into Zachary's home. He had clearly sobered up and cleaned himself up for the hearing, and he played the part of the wronged husband with convincing skill. The judge listened to both sides, his expression impassive. Marcus's lawyer painted Luna as an unfaithful wife who had abandoned her husband for another man. Luna's testimony about the abuse was met with skepticism, and Zachary's account of the break-in was dismissed as biased since he was clearly involved with the defendant's wife. When the hearing ended, the judge announced that he would take the matter under advisement and issue a ruling within the month. In the meantime, the restraining order would remain in effect, and both parties were to stay away from each other. It was not the victory they had hoped for, but it was not a loss either. As they left the courthouse, Palmer assured them that this was just the first step in what would be a long process, but Marcus was not content to let the legal system run its course. 2 days after the hearing, Zachary was in town picking up feed when he was approached by the sheriff, a grizzled man named Tom Reeves who had been keeping the peace in Winslow for over a decade. "Novak," Reeves said, his tone neutral. "We need to talk." Zachary felt his stomach sink. "What about?" "Marcus Dawson filed a complaint. Says you are harboring his wife against her will, that you have been keeping her isolated out at your place." "That is a lie," Zachary said flatly. "Luna is free to go wherever she wants. She stays because she wants to, because she is safe there." Reeves studied him for a long moment. "Look, I have heard things about Dawson. Heard he has a temper, especially when he drinks. But legally, Luna Dawson is still his wife. And if he is telling the court that he wants her back, that he wants to work on the marriage, the law is on his side." "Even if working on the marriage means beating her?" Zachary asked, anger rising in his voice. "You have proof of that?" Reeves asked. Zachary clenched his fists. "She has scars, bruises that were still fading when she showed up at my place. That was months ago. And without a doctor's examination at the time, without witnesses, it is just her word against his." Reeves sighed. "I am not saying I do not believe you. I am saying the law ties my hands. Best thing you can do is stay out of it. Let the lawyers handle things. Stay out of it." Zachary repeated incredulously. "That man broke into my home and tried to drag Luna away. I am supposed to just stand by and let it happen." "I am saying do not give him ammunition to use against you," Reeves said. "Be smart about this. Keep your nose clean and let the system work." But the system felt broken to Zachary as he rode back to the homestead. How was it that a man could terrorize his wife, could hurt her and control her, and the law saw him as the victim? How was it that Luna, who had shown more courage and strength than anyone he knew, was seen as the one in the wrong? When he got home and told Luna about the conversation with the sheriff, her face paled. "He is not going to give up," she said quietly. "Marcus never gives up on anything he considers his property. He will find a way to force me back." "Then we will find a way to stop him," Zachary said. But even to his own ears, the words sounded hollow. Christmas came and went quietly. Zachary had hoped to make it special for Luna, to give her a reprieve from the stress and fear that had become their constant companions. He bought her a warm shawl in town, soft wool in a deep blue that matched her eyes when she was happy. She had given him a shirt she had sewn herself, the stitches small and precise, and when he put it on, he felt her care in every thread. They spent Christmas Eve by the fire, reading aloud from a book of poetry Luna loved. Her voice filled the house, soft and melodic, and for a few hours, Zachary could almost forget about Marcus Dawson and the legal battle and the uncertain future. He could almost pretend that this was their life, that Luna was truly his, that nothing stood between them and the happiness they both wanted so desperately. But reality came crashing back the day after Christmas, when Theodore Palmer rode out to the homestead, his expression grim. "The judge issued his ruling," Palmer said without preamble. "He is denying the divorce petition." Luna swayed on her feet and Zachary grabbed her arm to steady her. "What? Why?" "He says there is insufficient evidence of cruelty. That it appears to be a case of marital discord that can be resolved through reconciliation rather than divorce." Palmer's jaw was tight with anger. "It is a load of garbage, if you will pardon my language, Miss Dawson." But the judge is old-fashioned, and he was clearly swayed by Marcus's performance in court. "So that is it?" Luna asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I am just supposed to go back to him, pretend that everything is fine." "No," Palmer said firmly. "We appeal. We gather more evidence. We keep fighting." "How?" Luna demanded, and Zachary could hear the desperation in her voice. "What evidence can we possibly gather? It is my word against his, and apparently my word means nothing. We find people who knew you in Santa Fe, neighbors who might have heard arguments, seen bruises. We build a case that is so strong the judge cannot ignore it." Palmer looked between them. "It will take time and money, and I will not lie to you, it is going to be difficult, but it is not impossible." After Palmer left, Luna sank into a chair and put her face in her hands. Zachary knelt beside her, his heart breaking at the sight of her despair. "We will get through this," he said, even though he was no longer sure he believed it. "What if we do not?" Luna looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. "What if he wins? What if the court forces me to go back to him?" "Then we will run," Zachary said. The words surprised him even as he said them, but he knew immediately that he meant them. "We will leave this place, go somewhere he cannot find us. California, maybe, or up into Montana. We will start over." "I cannot ask you to give up everything for me," Luna said. "You are not asking. I am choosing." He cupped her face in his hands. "Luna, I love you. I love you more than this land, more than this house, more than anything. If staying here means losing you, then this place means nothing to me." She kissed him then, desperately, clinging to him as if he were the only solid thing in a world that had tilted on its axis. Zachary held her close, pouring everything he felt into the kiss, all his love and fear and determination. When they finally broke apart, Luna rested her head on his shoulder. "I love you too," she whispered. "I think I have loved you since the night you found me in your barn and showed me kindness when I had forgotten such a thing existed." They sat like that for a long time, holding each other as darkness fell outside and the fire burned low in the hearth. Neither of them spoke about the future, about the legal battle or the possibility of running. For that moment, they simply existed together, two people finding solace in each other against a world that seemed determined to keep them apart. January of 1883 brought bitter cold and a snowstorm that blanketed the high desert in white. Zachary and Luna were snowed in for 3 days, the world outside reduced to a whirling wall of white. They spent the time huddled by the fire, talking and reading and simply being together. It was during those 3 days that Zachary realized something had shifted between them. The careful distance they had maintained, the propriety they had tried to preserve despite their feelings, had eroded. They still slept in separate rooms, but now they fell asleep together on the couch by the fire, Luna's head on Zachary's chest, his arms wrapped around her. They woke tangled together, and though nothing improper happened, The intimacy of it felt both natural and precious. When the storm finally cleared and they could venture outside again, it was to a transformed landscape. The desert was buried under 2 feet of snow, the usually brown and gold terrain now a pristine white. Luna stood on the porch, marveling at it, and Zachary came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "It is beautiful," she said softly. "Yes," Zachary agreed, but he was not looking at the snow. He was looking at her, at the way the morning sun caught the copper highlights in her hair, at the small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Beautiful. They spent the morning digging out the barn and checking on the animals. The horses and cattle had weathered the storm well, and there was something satisfying about working side by side, their breath fogging in the cold air, their cheeks red from the wind. It was as they were heading back to the house for lunch that they saw the rider approaching. Zachary felt Luna tense beside him, and he instinctively moved to place himself between her and the newcomer. But as the rider drew closer, Zachary relaxed slightly. It was not Marcus Dawson, but a younger man he recognized from town, one of the ranch hands who worked for the larger spread north of his property. "Novak," the man called as he reined in his horse. "Got a message for you. The lawyer, Palmer, asked me to ride out here." Zachary took the envelope the man offered, noting the way Luna's hands were clenched at her sides. He tipped the messenger and waited until he rode away before opening it. The letter was brief, but significant. Palmer had found 3 people in Santa Fe willing to testify about Marcus Dawson's violent behavior toward Luna. Former neighbors who had heard arguments, seen bruises, witnessed Marcus dragging Luna back into their house by her hair on one occasion. It was the evidence they needed to strengthen their case. "This changes things," Zachary said, passing the letter to Luna. "With witnesses, the judge will have to take the petition seriously." Luna read the letter, and for the first time in weeks, Zachary saw hope flicker in her eyes. "Do you really think this could work?" "I think we have a fighting chance," he said carefully. He did not want to promise her something that might not come true, but he also wanted her to know that this was real progress. They rode into town the next day to meet with Palmer, who outlined the next steps. The case would be reopened, the new witnesses would be deposed, and another hearing would be scheduled. It would take time, but there was now a real possibility that Luna could win her freedom. Marcus, however, was not taking the development well. He showed up at the lawyer's office while they were meeting with Palmer, drunk and belligerent, shouting about how his wife was a liar, and how he would not let her disgrace his name with false accusations. The sheriff was called, and Marcus was escorted away, but not before he caught sight of Luna through the window. The look on his face sent chills down Zachary's spine. It was pure malevolence, a promise of violence that words could not convey. "He is getting desperate," Palmer said after Marcus had been taken away. "That is good for us legally, but it also makes him dangerous. You two need to be careful." They were careful. Zachary made sure Luna was never alone, especially when he had to go into town or work in the far pastures. He taught her to shoot his spare rifle, and though she was reluctant at first, she proved to be a quick learner. They kept the doors locked at night, and Zachary took to sleeping on the couch in the main room rather than his bedroom, positioning himself between Luna and any potential intruder. February brought a thaw, the snow melting to reveal the brown earth beneath. With the better weather came the date for the new hearing, and Luna's nervousness increased with each passing day. "What if they do not believe the witnesses?" she asked the night before they were to go to court. "What if Marcus convinces them that they are lying?" "Then we keep fighting," Zachary said. He took her hands in his grip firm and steady. "Luna, look at me. No matter what happens tomorrow, no matter what the judge says, you are not going back to him. I promise you that." Even if we have to leave everything behind and start over somewhere new, you are not going back." Luna searched his face, then nodded slowly. "I trust you." Those 3 words meant more to Zachary than anything else she could have said. After months of fear and uncertainty, after years of abuse and betrayal at Marcus's hands, Luna trusted him. He would die before he let her down. The hearing the next day was tense. The 3 witnesses from Santa Fe testified, their accounts painting a damning picture of Marcus Dawson as a man prone to violent rages, particularly when drinking. One woman, an elderly neighbor, described hearing Luna screaming for help on multiple occasions. Another testified to seeing Marcus strike Luna hard enough to knock her down. Marcus's lawyer tried to discredit them, suggesting they were biased or mistaken, but their testimony was consistent and detailed. Zachary watched the judge's face and thought he saw the man's expression soften slightly as he listened. When it was Marcus's turn to testify, he maintained his innocence, claiming that Luna was exaggerating minor disagreements, that he had never laid a hand on her in anger. But under cross-examination from Palmer, his story began to crumble. He grew agitated, his answers became evasive, and at one point he shouted at Palmer in a display of temper that undercut his claims of being a peaceful man. The judge called for order and announced he would issue his ruling within 2 weeks. As they filed out of the courtroom, Zachary felt cautiously optimistic. The hearing had gone well, and he thought they had made a strong case. But Marcus was waiting outside the courthouse, his face flushed with anger. Before anyone could react, he lunged toward Luna, grabbing her arm. "You think you can make a fool of me?" he snarled, his grip tightening until Luna cried out in pain. "You think you can drag my name through the mud and just walk away?" Zachary did not think. He simply reacted, his fist connecting with Marcus's jaw with a satisfying crack. Marcus stumbled backward, releasing Luna, and suddenly there were people everywhere pulling them apart, the sheriff pushing his way through the crowd. "Enough," Reeves shouted. "Dawson, you are in violation of the restraining order." "Novak, assaulting someone in front of the courthouse is not exactly smart." "He grabbed her," Zachary said, his chest heaving. "I was defending her." Reeves looked between them, then at Luna, who was cradling her bruised arm. He sighed heavily. "Dawson, you are under arrest. Again." "Novak, get out of here before I change my mind about pressing charges." They did not need to be told twice. Zachary hustled Luna away from the courthouse, his heart still pounding with adrenaline and fury. By the time they reached their horses, Luna was trembling and Zachary pulled her into his arms. "I am sorry," he murmured into her hair. "I should not have lost control like that." "I am glad you did," Luna said, her voice muffled against his chest. "I am tired of being afraid of him. I am tired of him thinking he can do whatever he wants to me without consequences." The ride back to the homestead was quiet, both of them lost in thought. But that night, as they sat by the fire, Luna turned to Zachary with a determined expression. "No matter what the judge decides, I am done being Marcus's wife," she said. "Even if the divorce is denied, I will not go back. I will not live in fear anymore." "You will not have to," Zachary promised. "One way or another, we will find a way forward, together." The 2 weeks of waiting for the judge's ruling were some of the longest of Zachary's life. He threw himself into work around the homestead, repairing fences and equipment, anything to keep his mind occupied. Luna was similarly restless, cleaning everything until the house sparkled, baking bread they did not need, pacing the floor when she thought Zachary was not looking. Finally, on a clear morning in early March, a messenger arrived with word that the judge had issued his ruling. They were to present themselves at the courthouse at 2 o'clock that afternoon. The ride into Winslow felt interminable. Luna was silent beside him, her hands clenched in her lap, her face pale. Zachary wanted to reassure her, but he did not know what to say. Everything hung on what would happen in the next few hours. Theodore Palmer met them at the courthouse steps, his expression carefully neutral. "Whatever happens in there, remember that we have options," he said. "This is not the end, regardless of the outcome." They entered the courtroom together. Marcus was already there, flanked by his lawyer, and Zachary noted with satisfaction that he had a fading bruise on his jaw from where Zachary had hit him. The judge entered, and everyone rose. He was an older man with silver hair and a stern face, and as he settled into his seat and reviewed the papers before him, Zachary felt his heart hammering against his ribs. "I have given this case considerable thought," the judge began, his voice carrying through the silent courtroom. "Marriage is a sacred institution, and the decision to dissolve one should not be made lightly. However, the testimony presented in this case has convinced me that this particular marriage is irretrievably broken." Zachary felt Luna stiffen beside him, hope and fear warring in her expression. "The evidence of cruelty and abuse is substantial and credible," the judge continued. "Multiple witnesses have testified to Marcus Dawson's violent behavior toward his wife. Furthermore, his own conduct in recent months, including violating a restraining order and attempting to physically accost his wife outside this very courthouse, demonstrates a pattern of behavior that is incompatible with the duties and responsibilities of a husband." Marcus half rose from his seat, but his lawyer pulled him back down. "Therefore," the judge said, his gaze moving to Luna, "I am granting the petition for divorce. The marriage between Luna Dawson and Marcus Dawson is hereby dissolved. Mrs. Dawson is free to resume her maiden name or take whatever name she chooses. The restraining order shall remain in effect for a period of 1 year. Mr. Dawson, if you violate that order again, you will face criminal charges. Do you understand?" Marcus's face was purple with rage, but he managed a terse nod. "This court is adjourned," the judge said, and brought down his gavel with a sharp crack. For a moment, Luna just sat there as if she could not quite process what had happened. Then she turned to Zachary, her eyes wide and filling with tears. "I am free," she whispered. "Zachary, I am free." He pulled her into his arms, not caring that they were in a courtroom, not caring who was watching. "Yes," he said, his own voice thick with emotion. "You are free." Palmer was grinning as he shook both their hands. "Congratulations. This was hard fought, but we got there in the end." They had to wait while the paperwork was processed, but within an hour, Luna was walking out of the courthouse with legal documents declaring her divorce final. Marcus had already left, escorted out by the sheriff to ensure he did not cause any more trouble, and for the first time in months, Luna did not look over her shoulder as they walked to their horses. The ride back to the homestead felt different somehow. Lighter. Luna was smiling, really smiling in a way Zachary had not seen before. When they got home, she slid down from her horse and just stood there in the yard, her face tilted up to the afternoon sun. "I am free," she said again, as if testing the words. "I do not have to be afraid anymore." Zachary dismounted and came to stand beside her. "What do you want to do now?" Luna turned to look at him, and the love in her eyes made his breath catch. "I want to start our life together, properly, if the offer is still open." "The offer will always be open," Zachary said. He dropped to one knee right there in the muddy yard, not caring about propriety or tradition. "Luna, will you marry me? Will you be my wife, my partner, my everything?" "Yes," Luna said, pulling him to his feet so she could kiss him. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." They were married 3 weeks later in a simple ceremony at the small church in Winslow. Palmer served as a witness, along with a few of the neighbors who had come to know and respect Luna during her time at the homestead. Luna wore a new dress, simple but beautiful, and she carried wildflowers that had just begun to bloom in the desert. As Zachary slipped the ring onto her finger, a simple gold band he had purchased with money from selling 2 of his horses, he felt as if his heart might burst from happiness. This was everything he had dreamed of during those long months of uncertainty. This was the future they had fought so hard to secure. The first year of their marriage was not without challenges. Running a homestead was hard work, and there were times when money was tight and the weather was uncooperative, and they wondered if they had taken on more than they could handle. But they faced it all together, and that made all the difference. Luna threw herself into life on the homestead with enthusiasm, learning to handle the horses with skill, tending a garden that flourished under her care, and helping Zachary expand their cattle operation. She was smart and capable, and Zachary found himself relying on her judgment more and more as they made decisions about the future of their land. They heard occasional news of Marcus. He had left Winslow shortly after the divorce was finalized, apparently unable to handle the disgrace and the gossip. Some said he had gone to California, others that he had headed east back to Missouri. Luna did not care where he went, as long as it was far away from her. In the autumn of 1883, Luna discovered she was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks but waited to be sure before telling Zachary. When she finally did, on a cool evening as they sat together on the porch watching the sun set, his reaction was everything she had hoped for. A baby. He said, his voice full of wonder, "We are going to have a baby." "Yes," Luna said, laughing at the stunned expression on his face. "Are you happy?" "Happy." Zachary pulled her into his lap, holding her close. "Luna, I am more than happy. I am overwhelmed, grateful, terrified. Terrified." Luna echoed, "Of being a father, of whether I will be any good at it." He rested his hand gently on her still flat stomach. "But mostly I am just so excited to meet this little one, to watch them grow, to build a family with you." Their son was born in May of 1884, arriving during a spring rainstorm that broke the drought that had plagued them all winter. They named him Samuel Zachary Novak, and from the moment Zachary held his son for the first time, he knew his life had changed irrevocably. Luna was an incredible mother, patient and loving even during the sleepless nights and difficult days that came with a newborn. Zachary did his best to help, learning to change diapers and soothe the baby when he was fussy, marveling at how something so small could be so perfect. As Samuel grew from an infant into a toddler, the homestead prospered. Zachary's reputation for breeding quality horses spread throughout the territory, and they were able to expand their operation, hiring help during the busiest seasons. Luna started teaching some of the children in Winslow to read and write, continuing the legacy her father had started, and she found deep satisfaction in watching young minds blossom under her guidance. In the summer of 1886, their daughter was born. They named her Sarah, after Zachary's mother, and she had her mother's green eyes and auburn hair. Samuel, now 2 years old, was fascinated by his baby sister, wanting to help with everything from feeding her to singing her to sleep. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. The work was still hard, the challenges still real, but they faced everything as a team. On difficult days when the cattle got out or the well ran dry or the heat became unbearable, they would look at each other and remember how far they had come, how much they had overcome to get here. Luna never forgot the desperate young woman who had taken shelter in a barn one cold September night, pleading for just one night's rest. But she was no longer that frightened, broken person. She had become strong, confident, loved. The scars of her past would always be with her, but they no longer defined her. One evening, when Samuel was 5 and Sarah was 3, the family sat together on the porch as the sun set over the Arizona desert. The children were playing at their feet, and Luna leaned against Zachary's shoulder, his arm wrapped around her waist. "Do you ever think about that night?" Luna asked softly. "The night I showed up in your barn." "Sometimes," Zachary admitted. "I think about how my life was before you, how empty it felt even though I did not realize it at the time. And then I think about how one moment of kindness, one decision to help a stranger brought me everything I have now." "I asked for one night," Luna said, "and you gave me a lifetime." "You gave me a lifetime too," Zachary said, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "A life I never imagined I could have. A family, love, purpose." Samuel came running up to them then, holding a grasshopper he had caught, his face alight with excitement. Sarah toddled after him, demanding to see the bug too. Luna laughed and gathered both children close, and Zachary looked at his family, at the life they had built together, and felt a profound sense of gratitude. The years continued to pass, bringing new challenges and new joys. Samuel grew into a serious boy who loved working with the horses, showing the same natural talent his father had. Sarah was more interested in books and learning, and Luna would spend hours reading with her, teaching her letters and numbers. In 1889, they welcomed another son, Daniel, who was quieter than his siblings but possessed a stubborn determination that reminded everyone of Luna. The homestead continued to grow and prosper, becoming one of the most successful in the area. Zachary was able to buy additional land, expanding their grazing areas and building a new, larger barn. Luna became known throughout Winslow, not just as Zachary Novak's wife, but as a teacher and a woman who helped other women in difficult situations. More than once, she opened her home to women fleeing bad marriages or dangerous situations, offering them the same kindness and support Zachary had once offered her. She understood their fear, their desperation, and she never turned anyone away. Zachary supported her fully in these efforts, even when it meant housing strangers or dealing with angry men who came looking for their wives. He had learned from Luna that sometimes the most important thing you could do was simply offer someone a safe place to land, and he was proud of the difference they were making in people's lives. By 1892, their homestead was firmly established, and their children were growing like weeds. Samuel, now 8, was already helping his father with the horses. Sarah, at 6, could read as well as most adults and was constantly asking questions about everything she encountered. Daniel, at 3, was into everything, his curiosity boundless and occasionally dangerous. That autumn, Luna discovered she was pregnant again. At 32, she worried about the pregnancy more than she had with the previous ones, but Zachary was there every step of the way, his love and support unwavering. Their daughter Rose was born in the spring of 1893, a tiny, delicate baby with a surprisingly loud cry. With 4 children and a thriving homestead, their lives were full and busy. But Luna would not have changed a thing. Every morning when she woke up beside Zachary, every evening when they sat together watching their children play, she was reminded of how lucky she was, how different her life could have been if she had not found that barn on a desperate September night so many years ago. As the children grew older, Luna began to tell them her story. Not all at once, and not the darkest parts, but she wanted them to understand that she had not always lived in safety and happiness. She wanted them to know that their father was a hero, not because he had fought in battles or performed great deeds, but because he had shown kindness to a stranger when she needed it most. Samuel listened with wide eyes when she told him about arriving at the homestead with nothing but the clothes on her back. Sarah wanted to know every detail about the divorce proceedings, already showing the sharp legal mind that would one day serve her well. Daniel just wanted to know if his father had really punched a bad man, and was disappointed when Luna said yes, but added that violence should always be a last resort. Rose was too young to understand, but Luna knew she would tell her daughter the story too when she was older. Zachary, for his part, always downplayed his role. "I just did what any decent person would do," he would say when Luna called him her hero. "That is exactly what makes you a hero," Luna would reply. "You did what was decent when many people would not have. You risked your own safety and reputation to protect me. You fought for me when I could not fight for myself." The years rolled on, each one bringing new experiences and memories. They celebrated birthdays and holidays, weathered droughts and storms, mourned losses and celebrated victories. Their children grew into strong, capable young adults, each one carrying forward the values their parents had instilled: kindness, courage, hard work, and the importance of standing up for what was right. Samuel became an expert horseman, eventually taking over much of the breeding operation. Sarah pursued her love of learning, becoming a teacher like her mother and grandmother before her. Daniel found his calling in ranching, expanding their cattle operation with a shrewd business sense. And Rose, the youngest, showed early signs of becoming a healer, always caring for injured animals and sick neighbors with a gentle competence beyond her years. By the turn of the century, Zachary and Luna were in their 40s, their hair showing threads of gray, their faces lined with the marks of a life well lived. The homestead they had built together had become a landmark in the area, known for quality livestock and the generosity of its owners. One evening in 1902, as they celebrated their 20th wedding anniversary, their children threw them a party. Friends and neighbors from all over the area came to celebrate the couple who had become pillars of the community. There was music and dancing, food and laughter, and as Zachary twirled Luna around the floor they had cleared in the barn, she looked up at him with tears in her eyes. "What is wrong?" he asked, concern immediately crossing his face. "Nothing is wrong," Luna said, smiling through her tears. "I am just so happy. I am so grateful for every moment of the life we have built together. When I think about where I was 20 years ago, when I remember that desperate, frightened girl sleeping in your barn, it almost does not feel real." "It was real," Zachary said softly, "but so is this. This is real, Luna. Our love, our family, our life together. This is what we fought for and we won." They danced long into the night, surrounded by the people they loved in the home they had built together. And when the last guest had left and their children had finally gone to bed, Zachary and Luna stood together on their porch, looking out at the land they had tamed and nurtured for 2 decades. "You ever regret it?" Luna asked. "Taking me in that night? All the trouble it caused, the legal battles, the gossip." Zachary pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her waist from behind. "Not for one single second. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Luna. You and our children, this life we have built. If I could go back and do it all again, I would not change a thing." Luna leaned back against him, feeling the steady beat of his heart against her back. "I asked you for one night," she said softly. "Just one night to rest before I disappeared again." "And I gave you forever," Zachary replied, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Because from the moment I saw you in that barn, I knew my life would never be the same. I did not know how or why, but I knew you were meant to be in my life." They stood like that for a long time, watching the stars come out over the Arizona desert, the same stars that had shone down on them that first night so many years ago. The same moon that had illuminated Luna's desperate face when she had begged for shelter. The years continued to pass, but their love never diminished. They grew old together, their hands becoming more wrinkled, their steps slower, but their devotion to each other as strong as ever. They watched their children grow up and start families of their own, filling the homestead with grandchildren who brought new life and energy to the place. Samuel married a kind woman from a neighboring ranch and had 3 children of his own. Sarah married a lawyer from Flagstaff and divided her time between teaching and helping her husband with his practice. Daniel married late but happily to a woman who shared his love of the land, and they had twin boys who were the terror and delight of everyone around them. Rose became a nurse and married a doctor, and together they opened a small clinic in Winslow that served the community for decades. Through it all, Zachary and Luna remained each other's constant. They still worked side by side on the homestead, though they let their children and hired hands take on more of the physical labor as the years went by. They still sat together on the porch every evening, watching the sunset and talking about their day. They still fell asleep in each other's arms every night, grateful for another day together. In 1920, as they approached their 61st and 59th birthdays respectively, they celebrated their 38th wedding anniversary. Their children and grandchildren gathered at the homestead for a big party, and as Zachary looked around at the family they had created, the legacy they were leaving, he felt overwhelmed with emotion. "You gave me this," he said to Luna as they sat together, watching their grandchildren play. "You gave me this incredible life, this family, this joy." "We gave it to each other," Luna corrected gently. "You saved my life that night, Zachary, but you did more than that. You showed me that I was worth saving, that I deserved kindness and love and happiness. You gave me back myself." Zachary took her hand, running his thumb over her wedding ring, the simple gold band he had placed on her finger nearly 4 decades ago. "I love you," he said simply. "I have loved you from that first night, and I will love you for whatever time we have left and beyond." "I love you too," Luna said, squeezing his hand. "Thank you for giving me forever when I only asked for one night." They sat together as the afternoon faded into evening, surrounded by the family they had created and the life they had built. The homestead that had started with a desperate woman seeking shelter in a barn had become a thriving legacy, a testament to what could be built on a foundation of kindness, love, and unwavering commitment. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Luna rested her head on Zachary's shoulder, feeling a profound sense of peace. She had traveled so far from that terrified young woman fleeing an abusive marriage. She had found not just safety but love, not just shelter but a home, not just survival but a life worth living. And it had all started with a simple act of kindness, with a man who had looked at a stranger in his barn and chosen compassion over suspicion, generosity over self-interest, love over fear. That choice had changed both their lives, had created a family, had built a legacy that would endure for generations. The story of the homesteader who found a woman sleeping in his barn, who gave her forever when she asked for just one night, became a legend in their family. Their grandchildren would tell it to their own children, and those children would pass it on to the next generation. A reminder that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness could have the most profound consequences. And every time the story was told, it would end the same way, with 2 people sitting together on a porch, hands clasped, watching the sunset over the Arizona desert, grateful beyond measure for the life they had built together, grateful for the night their paths crossed, grateful for every moment since. Their love story was not perfect. There had been struggles and challenges, moments of fear and uncertainty. But through it all they had held on to each other, had chosen each other every single day. And that, more than anything else, was what made their story worth telling. As the moon rose over the homestead that night, casting silver light across the land they had nurtured for so many years. Zachary and Luna sat together in comfortable silence. They did not need words anymore to communicate their love, their gratitude, their contentment. It was there in the way their hands fit together, in the rhythm of their breathing, in the simple presence of each other. The homestead would continue to thrive long after they were gone, tended by their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. The barn where Luna had first sought shelter would be maintained and preserved, a monument to where it all began. And the story of their love would be passed down through the generations, a reminder that sometimes all it takes is one night of kindness to change the course of multiple lifetimes. In the end, that was their legacy. Not just the land or the horses or the successful ranch, but the proof that love could triumph over fear, that kindness could heal the deepest wounds, that two broken people could find each other and build something beautiful together. They had asked life for very little that first night, but they had been given everything that mattered. And they had spent every day since trying to deserve the gift they had been given, trying to pass on the same kindness and love to everyone they encountered. As they finally rose to go inside for the night, Zachary helped Luna to her feet, and they stood for a moment looking out at their land, their legacy, their life. Then, hand in hand, they walked inside together, ready for whatever tomorrow might bring, secure in the knowledge that they would face it together, just as they had faced everything for the past 38 years. The door closed behind them, the porch light casting a warm glow across the yard. And somewhere in the distance, in that old barn where it all began, the horses settled down for the night, safe and cared for, just as Luna had been that first night when a kind homesteader gave a desperate stranger a chance at a new life, and in doing so, found the love of his own life. Their story was complete, their circle closed, their happily ever after fully realized. From one night in a barn to a lifetime of love, from desperate strangers to devoted partners, they had lived the kind of love story that people wrote books about, the kind that restored faith in the goodness of humanity, the kind that proved beyond any doubt that sometimes the most extraordinary things could come from the simplest acts of kindness. And they had lived it together, every beautiful, difficult, joyful, challenging moment of it, together.